right there. Oh shit, nice, dude. Okay, this is fun. This is a little more of a challenge.
Hey guys, what is going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming, bringing you my review for Dick Wilde 2, developed by Bulwark Games and releasing on multiple PC VR platforms and PSVR this February 19th, 2019 for an estimated price of $20. Of course, that depends on your region. As usual, this review is for the PSVR version and was reviewed on a PS4 Pro. Toxic outbreak has been unleashed, mutating the local wildlife. Pair up with your friends and take on the deadly ooze and its disgusting dwellers. Clear the swamplands with superpowered weapons, from physics-defying beam guns to homemade revolvers. The first Dick Wilde was a polished but overly difficult wave shooter. Will bringing in a friend in co-op help even the odds? Let's find out. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. And remember, if you want more PSVR news and info, check Shughead Gaming out on Twitter and Facebook. As always, let's kick this review off with a look at graphics. Dick Wilde 2 sticks with the overtly cartoonish visuals of the first. Guns do seem to look a little bit sharper and tend to have a slightly more realistic look to them, but overall this second trip to the swamp looks almost exactly like the first. This isn't necessarily a bad thing though, as long as you don't mind the overall aesthetic here. That being said, some additional variety in the level design would have been nice throughout the game, as the same river and cave run sections got old regardless of the change in enemies. Visuals here are very sharp and polished with not a ton of flash, but still some nice lighting and particle effects here and there when trolling the water or blowing crap up. The addition of a second player sees your buddy show up next to you on your raft, represented as a floating head and gun. Dick Wilde may have taken a minimalist approach with the visuals of your partner, but thankfully the addition of a second player doesn't hurt performance in the slightest, as Dick Wilde seems to ramp up the enemy count in response to the second player with ease. All in all, Dick Wilde with its cartoonish visuals comes off very polished, if not just a little bland and repetitive. And that brings us to sound. Not surprisingly, the sounds, like the visuals, stay pretty true to the style set in the first. There are some new gun sounds, some new redneck one-liners from Dick himself, and of course some new hillbilly banjo tunes to shoot to. However, everything here just sounds a little too familiar to sound fresh and interesting. Guns sound decent, and just like the first are fun to fire off, but still lack any real kick in the audio department to really sell the whole experience. I again reference back to Shooty Fruity as an example of a cartoon wave shooter that nailed the gun sounds. Unfortunately, on the audio side of things, Dick Wilde 2 is actually not as polished as the first, with missing audio being heard here and there, most noticeably when shooting your gun on the main menu screen, or when holding down the trigger for a prolonged time with an automatic weapon, and actually hearing the audio clip run out and drop right out of the mix. Dick himself also runs out of things to say really fast, and was repeating himself by the second round. This lack of polish starts to make the sequel feel a little rushed and a little undercooked for a second attempt. Gameplay is up next. Like everything else so far, it won't surprise you to hear that the same over-the-top wave-based gunplay that inhabited the first is back in the second. Here, fortunately though, Bulwark Games have stepped up their game and brought more than a few changes and upgrades to Dick Wilde 2. Most noticeably is the change from a static wave-based shooter as you fired off from the dock of a lake, and then here in the second sees a change to a more on-rails type approach as you ride a raft down a slow-moving river. This livens things up a bit, but it does help bring a bit of visual variety when compared to the first. Along with the shift to a river run approach sees levels broken up into small stages with stops in the river every few minutes to purchase new upgrades, health, or just to change up your loadout. This was a welcome change from the first that was famously brutal in its difficulty, and it locked you into the same gun loadout for 10 straight rounds and a boss fight. And this brings us to another major change here in the sequel, the difficulty. As much as I enjoyed the first Dick Wilde, there are few people, including myself, that made it much past the first level in the first world, let alone finish the game. Where Dick Wilde 1 was overly challenging to the point of being no fun, Dick Wilde 2 tends to go the other way and at times was too easy to the point of being boring. This was most noticeable when in co-op, where the game does scale up the difficulty and the number of enemies, but never enough to compensate for the extra firepower and the ability to mix up ranged and close range weaponry with your friend. Even as the levels ramped up with additional and tougher enemies, we often blew through them with relative ease. In single player, however, this was much less of an issue as later levels seemed to ramp up to more challenging levels and definitely had me dodging and weaving to avoid incoming fire. It never reached the insanity that the first one did, and that's a good thing, but a difficulty setting would have been a nice addition, especially in co-op. The default control method for Dick Wilde 2 is the use of 2 move controllers. All weapons are dual wieldable and are upgraded independently of each other. This allows you to choose to go dual double barrel shotguns or mix it up and bring in a plasma gun to inhabit one of your hands. This versatility is awesome and really makes for some interesting loadout combinations. Dick Wilde's aim support was fantastic, having some of the best tracking the peripheral has ever seen. Thankfully, the same can be said for the second. When using the aim controller, you of course are left with a single weapon that visually is modified with a hand grip to make it a two-handed version. When using an aim version of a given weapon, I noticed that they were significantly buffed over their single-handed counterpart in order to make up for the lack of a second gun. Surprisingly, even with the loss of the second gun, I found the aim controller to be my method of choice, as I found the buffs to be more than comparable. And when combined with the superior aiming ability of the aim, I was much more lethal when using it. With 2 players using aim controllers, the above complaints of the game being too easy is even more prominent. Gun selection in Dick Wilde 2 is a bit of a mixed bag. While the choice of weapons is almost twice as big as the first, the guns here are also a lot less over the top and, as a result, interesting. Instead of a pop gun grenade launcher and a saw thrower, we're given multiple versions of Uzis, shotguns, and handguns, with only a few zanier weapons in the energy category. This dumbing down of the weapon variety also sees with it the absence of any dual modes that many of the first game's guns had, and the removal of the sentry turret option as well. Dick Wilde 2 is spread across 3 worlds. Each level consists of 6 core levels, 4 gun challenge levels for unlocking new guns, and a boss fight. These 30 levels and 3 boss fights will take approximately 3 to 4 hours to beat. However, with branching path choices, completionists could see 6 to 7 hours. Fortunately, anything earned in co-op automatically transfers over to single player regardless of who hosts. Dick Wilde 2 can be played seated or standing, with standing becoming much more required as the difficulty increases and dodging becomes much more required to stay alive. As such, a moderate amount of room is recommended. Motion sickness shouldn't be an issue for most as the raft moves slowly, but those who are very sensitive may want to buy with caution as there are no comfort settings. And finally, that brings us to fun factor in my final review. Dick Wilde 2 is dumb wave shooter fun that doesn't really bring much new to the table for wave shooters in general, or even to its own franchise. This river run aspect is a nice addition, but unfortunately is so slow that it often fades away into the sameness of the tried and true Dick Wilde gameplay. The real saving grace here is its co-op mode. Although making the game a bit on the easy side, Dick Wilde is easily at its most fun when played with a friend. As you know, I hate number ratings and instead rate games on the basis of buy, wait for a sale, or burn it to the ground. If you're not sick of wave shooters yet and are looking for another game to support your aim controller, then Dick Wilde may have enough going for it to keep you happy, and especially if you have a friend to tag along. Others, wait for a sale, as there just isn't enough new here to justify the price tag. Anyways guys, that's it for me. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing. And for updates, hit that bell icon. I'll catch you guys on my next video.